big game, they're all big.
Got a little butterflies? If you don't, work them up. You ought to have just a little bit of butterflies, just a little bit of shake.
In the long and storied history of the NFL, there have been over 7,000 football games. Although there are degrees of importance in every contest, very few attain the status of greatness. A memorable football game is as rare as a masterpiece painting, but also very similar. For like a fine work of art, there is a good deal of subjectivity when it comes to defining its beauty, power, and significance. What is it that makes some games burn brightly even in the dimmest corridors of our memory? To many purists, they are the contests dominated by fiercely aggressive defense. Contact is indeed the most stimulating essence of the sport. But historically, what brings people out of their seats and onto their feet are those gripping affairs where great defense very grudgingly yields to an all-out effort on offense. The great games involve fans as much as players. They are the ones that stretch the emotions of the populace with cheers and tears. So much so that fans and players alike are often mentally and physically drained by game's end. Above all, the truly classic contests are those whose outcome are seemingly decided by some higher order. They are the suspenseful affairs that are only resolved in the final seconds, when desperate men sketch images of victory that, like masterpieces of art, remain forever frozen in time. There have been over 7,000 games played in the NFL. Only a select few stand out as the very best that have ever been played. Most discussions about great football games begin and end with Alan Amici's touchdown and the Baltimore Colts' sudden death victory in the 1958 championship. No game in NFL history is more revered than this overtime epic that began on an unusually mild late December day in New York City. The high-profile Giants featured the likes of Frank Gifford, Alex Webster, Sam Huff, and a coaching staff that included two talented young assistants. To many observers, they had a clear edge over Weeb Ewbank's very jittery Baltimore Colts.
In the locker room, everybody's nervous for the first time we've ever played in the championship game in the Yankee Stadium, and Weeb's going down. Each guy, he brought each guy in. He drafted, he knew us, and he's going down, saying where we came from. He picked us up off the sandlots. He had a great speech. But about 5 or 6 of us never heard it because we were in the head throwing up. We were, we were nervous.
Ironically, once the game began, it was the more seasoned Giants who did some coughing up. Led by quarterback Johnny Unitas, Baltimore took advantage of numerous Giant fumbles to forge a 14-3 halftime lead. A blowout appeared imminent, especially when the Colts drove to the Giant goal line early in the third quarter.
At first we tried just, going over from about the 1-yard line. The ground was rather frozen down on that end of the field. And I didn't get good footing, and I tried 3 times and couldn't get in from the 1-yard line. So John, in his most inventive way, called me to throw a pass. It was going to be a pitch out, and then Jim Mutchler was to release from his block and then end up in the end zone. Not having heard that play before, I completely blew it, and I thought it was a sweep. So I got tackled for about a 5-yard loss, and then the whole momentum of that game changed.
In a contest that had equal mixtures of Greek comedy and tragedy, the Giants haphazardly stumbled back. Alex Webster's timely effort following Kyle Rote's fumble set up one Giant touchdown. And in the fourth quarter, the suddenly high-flying hometowners grabbed the lead on Frank Gifford's score. Giant fans dreamed of a championship. With just 2 minutes remaining, it was only a first down away. But a controversial call on Frank Gifford's attempt to gain it on 3rd and 4 began what would be a Giant nightmare.
I think they blew the call. There's a mental thing in your head when you have a 3rd down and a yard to go or half a yard or whatever it happened to be. You know when you've made it. I didn't even look over to the yardstick.
Frank, you should have. New York punted, pinning the Colts far back. The lead seemed safe. What happened next, however, altered the course of professional football. Johnny Unitas desperately drove Baltimore downfield. Stunned Giant fans watched in horror. But NFL executives looked on in glee. For the first time, a nationally televised championship mesmerized millions of viewers. Many more tuned in just in time to witness Steve Myra's game-tying field goal and the NFL's first venture into sudden death.
It was very strange. You know, we were all asking each other what happens next, or, you know, the rules weren't too clear on that. So, but that's again where a guy like Unitas always stepped in there. He was the brains of the outfit, no question about it.
Baltimore lost the coin toss. But after the Giants failed again in their opening drive, the third-year quarterback picked up where he left off in regulation. Although only a field goal was needed, the cocky Unitas left little doubt that with the title on the line, he was leaving nothing to chance.
Well, I was just thinking about a score. I would really, you know, the field goal really never entered my mind. I never have put too much strength on field goals myself. I'd rather go for a touchdown. I knew right then and there that we had the ball game on.
John was somewhat criticized for not calling a timeout there and going for the field goal. I think a lot of people have forgotten that it was 3rd down. They thought we were going for it on 4th. But in the event that we missed it, we still had, you know, time for the field goal. But an interesting thing on that play, which was the genius of a Unitas, and a lot of people missed this. We were on the right hash mark, and everybody in the world, including the Giants, thought we were going to go for an off tackle to the left, and if we missed, we'd be right smack in front of the goalpost. And John just took that little bit of a gamble and ran to the right on that play. And everybody was stacked to the left. And he had Lenny Moore there, who was not known as a great blocker. And he threw a key block, and it was wide open. I mean, there wasn't anything to the play.
Through the years, this dramatic championship has been elevated to legendary proportions. Yet legends die hard. Despite well-documented evidence to the contrary, the grandeur of this game is something of a myth.
People have built it up to be such a great game, and it was a good game, but it was far from a great game.
That game was probably the greatest game for the National Football League because of the notoriety of it. But I don't think that game was that good a game, really. I don't think it was the best game ever played.
You know, it wasn't a picture-perfect type game. I think it was just a dramatic ending that most people remember. And it was the greatest game I ever played in, I'll put it that way.
On January 2nd, 1982, a steamy, sultry Orange Bowl provided the backdrop for a first-round playoff game between the San Diego Chargers and Miami Dolphins.
Here we go, Dolphins! Here we go!
Even before kickoff, anxious fans spoke sportscasters' jargon to describe their excitement over what would eventually be one of the greatest games ever played.
Well, I tell you, this is going to be a good one, because I tell you, you get those big boys racking them down. There's some head cracking going on today, and I tell you, the San Diego Chargers, and somebody's going to fumble and I tell you, it's going to be a good barn burner down in the Orange Bowl. Danny Fouts and David Woodley and all those other big boys. Head cracking going on today, Henry.
The Dolphins were slight favorites to win, but the visiting Chargers shocked everyone with a barrage of first-quarter scores. Wes Chandler's punt return ignited an outburst of 24 unanswered points as San Diego looked to turn the game into an early rout.
Way to go, James! Way to go, James! Way to bust in there!
But Coach Don Coryell knew that with 3 quarters still to play, too much time remained for his Chargers to relax.
I think what happened is that we woke the Dolphins up and created a sense of urgency within their football team that, hey, we got to get back into this game. We got to get back into it now.
The Dolphins made a key move when they yanked faltering quarterback David Woodley for backup Don Strock.
My first thoughts were, please don't put me in there. But we knew the Chargers had a average defense at that time. My basic feeling was that we had to throw the ball to win the game. The Chargers ran a lot of man-to-man coverage at that time. I could see that, and we tried to run as many man-to-man patterns as we could. And we got Tony Nathan free down the middle a few times, and Duriel Harris off of a double team, and we really basically called all the man-to-man patterns we had in our offense.
I think when you enter a game in that type of situation for a backup quarterback, the pressure's off. Hey, I wasn't there when it was 24-0. I didn't throw the interceptions or make the bad plays. As the backup quarterback, he's coming in really with a clean slate. Pressure was off him, and all of a sudden it was on us.
Tell him about it, Don Strock. Get him in the end zone, Don. Let's go, boys.
We had not prepared for Strock. We talked about Strock, but we prepared all week for Woodley and scrambling and rolling out and doing the things that he does. Strock, conversely, he just pulls back, takes a look around, he's so experienced, and dumps off to the open receiver.
Strock just came in and he played a perfect game. He couldn't play it any better. He'll never play any better than he did that evening.
While the Chargers were held in check for the rest of the half, the Dolphins were plotting to unleash a schoolyard play that caught the San Diego defense totally unprepared.
We call the play 86 circle curl lateral is the name of the play. Coach Shula said, well, how about the circle curl lateral? And everybody was kind of like, well, how about the circle curl lateral? There was a timeout. There was 6 seconds on the clock. It's pretty hard to believe that a guy would bite on a play like that with 6 seconds to go and you're 50 yards away from the goal line. Then it worked perfectly and it made every high school coach in the world happy because every high school has that play.
Strock drops to throw. He's firing for Harris. Lateral, 20, 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Dolphins. To Tony Nathan on the last play of the first half.
I tell y'all, we're going to come back. We're going to come back and whoop them. Miami's #1. Never give up on Miami.
When we saw the play develop, we laughed. We said, oh, boy, we're in for it now. And what it did for us is it made us realize that, hey, this game isn't over. This game is going to go right down to the wire, and so be it. We're going to be there, too.
The Chargers roared back on the play of number 80 tight end Kellen Winslow. In a game with many heroes, Winslow earned special notice, setting playoff records for receptions and yardage while overcoming a pinched nerve, a bruised shoulder, and heat exhaustion.
I remember Dave Levy, who's now our offensive line coach. I came out of the game going to the bench, wincing in pain. About a minute later, I ran by Dave, tapped him on the hip, and said, I'm going back in. And as I was running by him, I heard him saying to the coaches upstairs in the press box through the speaker, I don't believe this. He's going back into the game. And I looked back at him and started grinning. And I said, this sounds like TV. It sounds like somebody wrote this.
The drama continued to unfold as both teams seized, then lost the lead. But with only minutes remaining in the fourth quarter, the Dolphins finally took control and appeared to have victory within their grasp.
Dolphins running off the clock. The Chargers have to force a turnover. Stroud hands off to the first man. The ball's on the ground. Chargers have recovered. So San Diego lives, has one more shot from their own 18.
Trailing 38-31, the Chargers mounted a desperation drive. With less than a minute to go, San Diego tied the game on a play that probably should have failed.
I was zeroed in on Kellen Winslow. I escaped out to the right and saw Kellen heading back to the corner of the end zone. Didn't even see James Brooks. Well, to my surprise, Kellen couldn't get it. The next thing I know, here's this flash, and it's James Brooks, and he makes the catch for the tying touchdown. That's one that's just pure luck.
The Chargers' good luck continued during the final play of regulation. The Dolphins' Uwe von Schamann attempted the winning field goal, but Kellen Winslow added to his heroics by blocking the kick. In overtime, the Chargers had their opportunity to win, but the results were similar.
Badurska's ready. It's a 27-yarder. The snap, it's down, he hits it, it's up. It's no good.
Badurska had never missed a game-winning field goal in his career. But then the Chargers blocked a second Dolphin field goal try minutes later, and Miami's fighting spirit had finally reached the breaking point.
In the overtime, when we had the opportunity to win the game and missing the field goal, and I think that moment was probably the big down of that particular day. Even though they beat us later on during the course of the game, I think that moment was probably the most toughest moment to swallow as a player in that game.
The Chargers were given a second chance, and this time they did not fail.
At the end of the game, I felt our offensive line had dominated the Dolphins' defensive line and had demoralized them to the point where, hey, we can't get to the quarterback and we're not going to win.
Behind perfect protection, Fouts picked Miami apart, setting the stage for Badurska's game-winning field goal. On a hot, muggy Florida evening, two teams had waged an epic battle that they would remember for the rest of their lives.
Nietzsche, the German philosopher, once said, "If it doesn't kill me, it's going to make me stronger." And that's what that game did. We almost died, and we came through.
I've seen an awful lot of great games, but I think that one has to be at the top. It was uplifting. There was no sense of defeat by anybody involved, or even by the people in the stands. To see it was just man rising as high as he could in a form of athletic endeavor. I felt that I just experienced something rare and unusual that I would not soon be seeing again, if ever.
In the late 50s, the Baltimore Colts had turned the NFL championship into a one-horse race, winning exciting title games in 1958 to 1959. But in 1960, in their attempt to win an unprecedented third league championship, the Colts played in a regular season game as memorable as any playoff contest. Against the Detroit Lions in Baltimore, quarterback John Unitas and halfback Lenny Moore, number 24, helped give the Colts an 8-3 lead. Baltimore's prestigious passing attack had already helped earn the Colts 6 wins against only 3 losses, while the inept Lions appeared to be on their way to another losing season. Number 40, Bobby Boyd's interception protected the Colts' expected advantage. But as the game wore on, the predictable ultimately made way for the peculiar. The infallible Unitas to Raymond Berry connection failed to hook up. And moments later, the Lion offense uncharacteristically took Baltimore's defense, and everything else for that matter, head on. Detroit eventually went ahead 13-8 late in the game. However, Unitas, renowned for last-minute miracles, once again began to work his magic. Number 19 cleverly tamed the Lion defense without the aid of a whip and chair.
We thought we had him, and it was a situation that was third down and long yardage, and we thought he was going to throw short, and damned if he didn't go back, and he threw a long one. And it looked as though the ball was going to go way over Lenny's head, and Night Train was right with him. And Lenny leaps horizontally in the air, and he catches the ball in the end zone. And as soon as he catches the ball, I swear to God, Night Train turned white. He's black. I mean, he got like real crazy. The only thing we saw then was this huge crowd came out of the end zone and covered the field on that side. Meanwhile, we come off the field, and I have two people on the sidelines. I don't know how they got there, and I'm fighting with one of them. One guy pulls a knife on me. I'm running around George Wilson, our coach, hoping that should he stab someone, it might be George instead of me. George will say, "What are you doing? You crazy?"
The temporary insanity afflicting both the crowd and the players of this game became even more evident on the ensuing kickoff, with only half a minute remaining.
We kick off to the Lions, and I see Gil Mames hit Alex Hawkins, who was my teammate. He wasn't maybe one of my favorite football players, but he was still my teammate. He took a sucker shot on him and knocked the hell out of Hawkins. And Mames is laying on the ground, so when I run by Mames, I drop kicked him right in the face as hard as I could. But I got caught and I got thrown out of the game. Lo and behold, the next play, Earl Marlowe throws a pass to Jim Gibbons, the slowest guy on the field other than me, and he runs for a touchdown.
The thing I remember is the absolute silence in the stadium. You could hear Jim Gibbons running. It was so quiet. And that was it, boy. There was not one cheer. I mean, it was absolute stone silence. And that pretty well knocked us out of the race in 1960.
And Weeb Eubanks blamed me for losing the damn game. After, you know, just because I wasn't in, I got kicked out of the game. It stopped the clock. There was only 14 seconds left to go in the game, and we lost the ball game. And I guarantee you, I didn't know what to say. I got fined $1,000 for doing it, but I said, well, I got satisfaction out of it. I didn't like Mames to start off with. I thought he was a jerk, but then after you meet the guy down at the National Football League alumni thing, great fella. Going out, getting me beer, buying me pizza, wonderful fella.
I had to put on a different jersey because I thought they were going to kill me. But everybody was in a state of shock. I don't know if they ever got over that shock, but it really was a great shock to the fans.
While there have been more famous games for sheer excitement and entertainment, the Lions' zany 20-15 win deserves a place among the NFL's greatest games. In the early 70s, the Miami Dolphins were a portrait of perfection. Following two consecutive Super Bowl titles in 1972 and 73, the Dolphins were intent on capturing a third. However, in 1974, Miami wasn't the only team flying its colors proudly. The Oakland Raiders were to pro football what Blackbeard the Pirate and his motley crew were to the open seas. And the silver and black's ominous image was frighteningly evident when they hosted the Dolphins in the opening round of the playoffs.
When we came out for that game, there was more excitement in the stadium than I ever heard anywhere or felt anywhere. And everyone had a black handkerchief, and from the pregame warm-ups, they were wired in Oakland. We were playing the Dolphins, and it was going to be big. I'm excited, the team's excited, we're going to get them and all this stuff. And we kick off, you know, the opening kickoff crescendo, you know, the thing, ooh, 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 whap, we kick the ball. They get the ball, and boom, all the way back. He runs, I think it was Nat Moore, ran it back 100 yards. And now here we were, you know, Black Sunday, Raiders, revenge, Dolphins, get them in Oakland, fans crazy, team crazy, good, gonna do it. And the opening kickoff in our park, and they run it back all the way. So now it's 7-0, you know, and the fans haven't even sat down yet.
The Raiders' fortunes went from bad to worse when their explosive passing attack failed to ignite. But while the offense let opportunities slip away, the Raiders' defense took a firm hold on the Dolphins' elusive running game. Oakland took pressure off its struggling offense by placing it on Miami's. And when the first quarter ended, the opening kickoff return remained the only score. The Raiders stuck with their passing game despite its early failure, and the all-out assault of the end zone eventually paid off. Charlie Smith's touchdown put Oakland on the board, and as the game wore on, the Raiders continued to focus their attention on the Dolphins' secondary. Fred Biletnikov's circus catch was ruled out of bounds, but Oakland's ringmaster called for a repeat performance.
Ball on the 13, second and 10. Stabler back, looks left, throws right. Biletnikov, a leaping catch, touchdown!
Trailing for the first time, 14-10, Miami's Don Shula refueled his team's competitive fires. The fleet-footed Paul Warfield's touchdown helped put the Dolphins back on top, 19-14. However, in the fourth quarter, the Raiders answered the score with their own speed burner wide receiver Cliff Branch, number 21.
Let you go take it. Right. I think you can get to around the outside. I can put on the outside hand. I can run under, you know. I can take it that way. Good job, good job.
They're going to the air now. Here's the deep one, the Browns. Deep. He's got it!
Branch's 72-yard touchdown gave Oakland the lead once more. But with time becoming a factor, Miami called upon its punishing running attack to eat up both yardage and the clock on its way to the Raider end zone. Fullback Larry Zonka muscled his way to the Oakland 23, setting up halfback Benny Malone's Herculean effort that gave Miami a 26-21 lead. Just 2 minutes remained after Malone's touchdown. And while the time left seemed insufficient to the grieving Raiders, it seemed like an eternity to the concerned Dolphins.
I remember thinking that I wished on the scoring play that we had that put us ahead. I was concerned because there was so much time left. I knew that Stabler had the capacity to take that ball back down the field, and he did.
When you get in a pressure situation like that where everything's riding on a single play or two, there's no one that you'd rather have involved in that play than Kenny Stabler. He has the uncanny knack of putting a ball between people and between hands and just being able to slip things in there from all different angles, and that's exactly what he did.
With time running out, Stabler dashed Miami's hopes of a third consecutive title in dramatic fashion.
Here he is, fading, looking. He's under the gun. He's tied, he throws. It is. He caught it.
picked the ball up because it was hit as he threw. It looked like he might have been lobbing it into the promised land for Miami. But no, Davis got there first, and it was the Raiders' promised land.
Oakland's 28-26 win evoked emotional extremes, characteristic of only the greatest of games.
After the game, there was Don just crying, just letting it all out, crying, and afterwards saying he was just so disappointed that for the guy's sake. But this is the one time in my life that I've seen him actually just sit down and let the tears flow for a disappointment.
You'll never see a better game than this one, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you'll agree.
Frankly, it was maybe the greatest football game I have ever seen. It was just incredible.
On a day savage enough to make a St. Bernard whimper, they played the 1967 NFL Championship.
The operator said, very cheery, "Good morning, Mr. Rensel. It's 8 a.m. It's 15 below zero, and there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the northwest. Have a pleasant day."
It is called Russian winter, the kind of brutal cold that made Napoleon and Hitler flee in panic from the doorstep of Moscow. But in Green Bay, it is called Packer weather. Here men conquer and laugh at the elements. Today, Vince Lombardi's Packers walk toward an unprecedented third straight NFL championship. Prisoners of the weather, the Dallas Cowboys wore the look of convicts walking the final mile.
Prior to the game, of course, we got there 2 days before the game, and there's a picture that I took of Meredith, and he had his hands cupped like this, and he was saying, easy money, you know, like the game was going to be easy. And if he'd only known, you know, how cold it was going to be, I don't think he would have said that.
You had no feeling in your hands. There's nobody that has an advantage in that kind of weather. That is cold. I mean, it was miserable.
It was so cold that when you literally walked outside, you couldn't take it. Now, you play in cold games most of the time, and it takes a while for you to get cold. But in this particular circumstance, the cold hits you like the moment you were out there. The band was out there, you know, to play before the game, and we looked over there and I saw like 15 guys in the tuba and trumpet section, and all their faces had blood all over. And what had happened, they were going out there to play, and the instruments stuck to their lips, and when they pulled the instrument away, it just ripped all the skin on their lips off. So everywhere you looked, you saw this kind of insanity going on. We go back to the locker room, and instead of going over our game plan and stuff, we're like trying to improvise and ad-lib on how we're going to get through the game. Forget winning the game, how are we going to survive the game? Well, somebody got this wild idea that let's put the stocking net down over our faces, and then we can cut out eye holes and nose holes and a mouth hole, you know, and like things that just seemed preposterous that there would have been that much concern with. That's all we could think about. So Landry, I think, just kind of lost control of what the situation was at that moment, and I don't blame him. I mean, nobody wanted to hear about game plans.
The cold never came into my, never thought about the cold, like, because I wanted to win that game so bad.
I didn't feel the cold as much that day as I would have on a normal day. I was excited about the game. We had a great deal of emotion, a great deal of adrenaline running through our bodies, and we had a job to do. We had other things on our mind. And that particular day, we were worried about Dallas. We weren't worried about the cold.
With the Packers focused on victory and the Cowboys merely on survival, the first period took a natural course, a course that took Green Bay into the end zone. Twice Bart Starr hit number 86 Boyd Dollar with touchdown passes. And the Packers built a 14-0 lead in the second quarter.
We had one of the, if not the fastest teams to ever play the game. We had speed at every skill position and at places where you weren't supposed to have speed. But not only was our speed taken away, I think the fact that Bobby Hayes was nullified by the weather conditions. That was not one of Bobby's great games.
I guess one of my most vivid memories of that game is of Bob Hayes, the wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys, running his pass patterns with his hands in his pants. He put both hands down in the front of his pants, and he would run a pass pattern with his hands still in his pants.
Cowboy speed was not the only thing muffled by the cold.
I blew my whistle to start the ball game, and I didn't really blow it. It was only a half a blow because it was a tweet, and that was the end of all whistles for the ball game. They all froze on us. Joe Connell, he tried to blow his whistle and nothing came out, and he took it out, and he didn't have a nipple on his whistle or rubber, and half his lip came with it. So we just yelled, stay away, keep off them, and everything.
As icicles lengthened into stalactites, Cowboy chances for a comeback grew longer. Finally, the Doomsday defense drew a bead on Bart Starr and battered him. A touchdown by defensive end George Andre, number 66, and a field goal narrowed the score to 14-10 at the half.
The total momentum of the game had shifted over. Now, by this time, it's much colder than it was even at the start of the game. But we've gotten our focus and our concentration on the game itself.
The game huffed and puffed along and lost its steam in the third quarter. The cold became intolerable. Then Vince Lombardi's electric blanket installed under the turf to thaw the ground failed. Lambeau Field was an ice rink with a surface more suited to Hans Brinker and his silver skates than football players and cleats.
The field was like take a rug and put it over marble, or maybe just play on marble, and you've got an idea of the field and what it was like in terms of traction. And I didn't really want to hit the ground. I didn't want to get hit by anybody, and I didn't want to hit the ground. Meredith was sitting in the huddle, and he gets down on one knee and he goes, "Red right, hang on." I said, "That's easy for you to say, Don, but what did you say?" He said, "Right, hang on two." And what was happening was his cheeks were freezing, and he couldn't talk, and his ability to formulate the words was leaving him. So Don had to call the plays by taking his hands and moving his mouth in such a way. I mean, he was talking with his hands.
8 seconds into the fourth quarter, the frozen lips of Don Meredith formed a bold but risky call. A halfback option pass from Dan Reeves to Lance Rensel. The pass not only sliced through high winds and frigid air, but seemed destined to carve out the Cowboys' first NFL championship. The Cowboys achieved their first lead, 17-14. Trapped inside their igloo, the Packers appeared a beaten team.
When we came on the field as a team to start that drive, and this is most important, everybody in that huddle had the look that we were going to get it done somehow, some way, and it was the greatest feeling in the world. I felt that way, and as I looked into the eyes of the other players in that huddle, it was a great thing to see.
With 4 minutes 40 seconds remaining, the Green Bay Packers launched one of the most thrilling and dramatic comebacks in NFL history. They would have to travel 68 yards across a polar ice cap and through a defense determined to preserve their first NFL title.
I remember Boyd Dowler's head bouncing off the frozen turf when he caught a pass for a first down, and his head bounced 3 or 4 times.
The Packers' march centered on 2 unlikely heroes. Running backs Donnie Anderson, number 44, and Chuck Mercine, number 30.
They were alert enough at that stage of the game, cold and battered, to come back and tell me of ways that they could get open when they really were not the primary receiver.
The Packers plowed inside the 10 when they suckered Bob Lilly out of position by falsely pulling a guard, then sneaking Mercine into the vacated rush lane. At the goal line, the Packers' drive stalled. 16 seconds remained, and it was 3rd and goal when they took their final timeout.
2 other times earlier in the game, we had run a play which we call a wedge play, designed strictly for short yardage out in the field. It was also a goal line play. The problem was that at that end, the south end of the field, a shadow is cast down there late in the season by the scoreboard, and the field was really frozen. And so the backs could not stand up and even get to the line of scrimmage. So when I went to the sideline, I told Coach Lombardi the wedge play would work. I said, but the backs can't get there. I said, I'm upright. I can just feel my way in for a couple of steps and then just lunge in there. He said, great, run it. Let's get this thing over with.
It was too slick in that part of the field to do any kind of end runs or any kind of, anything other than maybe a straight ahead play or a quarterback sneak. I had told Jethro, I said, Jethro, I think they're going to come right at you or me, right up the middle. And I was trying to dig some holes with my cleats, but the ice was a couple inches thick. And I said, we ought to call timeout and get a screwdriver and dig us some footholes.
Here are the Packers. 3rd down, inches to go. To Bader. 17-14. Cowboys out in front. Packers trying for the go-ahead score. Starr begins the count. Takes the snap. He's got the quarterback sneak, and he's into the touchdown. The Packers are out in front. 20-17. There's 13 seconds showing on the clock, and the Green Bay Packers are going to be world champions, NFL champions.
It's probably the greatest play in all of 15 years when he fell over for that touchdown, and we won that ball game. We knew we were going to win our 3rd championship in a row.
And I give them all the credit for being champions and doing what needed to be done to win. But I got to tell you, I've never seen a loss take the heart out of a team like that loss took it out of the Dallas Cowboys. On the plane ride home, not one word was said. Not one word. It was like a tomb for 3 hours on a flight. The press came out and called us chokers and said that the Dallas Cowboys couldn't win the big one.
Vince Lombardi's Packers had won another big one. They had conquered both the elements and the Cowboys to capture a record 3rd straight NFL title. It was a game that would literally become frozen in the memory. A game considered the greatest in pro football history.
To me, that was the greatest single football game I ever saw. I think it was the greatest array of players in one given game. Many, many of them are now in the Hall of Fame. The Waterfields, the Van Brocklins, the Grahams, Lavellis, Groses, they were innumerable.
The 1950 NFL championship game between the Los Angeles Rams and the Cleveland Browns featured 11 future Hall of Famers. No other game in history can make that claim. Both teams had sleek offensive attacks that stamped them as pioneers in the pro football world. And yet until 1950, the Browns had not played a game in the National Football League.
We had heard a lot of the Browns. They have dominated that All-American League that we're in. And Otto Graham, of course, was one of the greatest throwers of all time, and their team had great balance.
They had some awfully fine football players. You know, when you talk about Graham and Max Speedy, Lavelle A-Dub Jones, Marion Motley, those are football names that are pretty well etched in history, you know.
The Rams had their share of all-timers at 1950. They established an NFL standard, averaging nearly 40 points per game. One more element made this game a compelling study.
The Rams left Cleveland that year to go to Los Angeles, and we replaced the Rams in Cleveland. So here they were coming back this next year, having been in Cleveland, playing in Cleveland against the new Cleveland team.
We went back to Cleveland on a very, very cold day, and the field was frozen.
It was a bitter cold day. It seesawed back and forth. Waterfield was doing a great job in there, and so was Graham.
It was Waterfield and the Rams who exploded out of the starting blocks on the game's very first play from scrimmage.
I just outran the linebacker who was trying to cover me. So I was wide open, and Waterfield just lofted the ball to me, and it accomplished about 80 yards for a touchdown. Good way to start the game. We were very pleased with it because we'd been working on it for 3 or 4 days.
Browns quarterback Otto Graham then reaffirmed his greatness. He overcame 2 first-half deficits and passed the Browns into the lead in the third quarter. But 2 touchdowns in a span of 21 seconds regained the Rams' advantage at 28-20. As the temperature plummeted into the teens, Graham engineered a fourth-quarter comeback that still to this day commands admiration. The final of 9 completions culminated a scoring drive that brought the Browns to within a point with just over 4 minutes to play.
We were leading going into about 3 minutes of the end of the game, and all we had to do was control that ball.
We couldn't make a first down, so we had to kick.
And we didn't have much time, maybe a minute to go.
Graham got out of deep holes several times. He scrambled around. He kept the ball alive. One time it was 4th and 19, and somehow he made it.
It was vintage Graham, a large part of the reason why, in 10 seasons with the Browns, he quarterbacked in 10 championship games. Skillfully, he had the Browns at the 10-yard line with 30 seconds on the clock.
It was at this point I sent in the place-kicking unit, and our guys in the sideline started shaking hands with each other and as if the game was over. This was a cold, raw day, and I said, don't do that. If I had a feeling it was bad luck or something, but we settled down quickly.
And watch Lou Groza win the first of 3 NFL championships for the Cleveland Browns of the 1950s.
We got beat by a 17-yard field goal by Groza that I still don't think went through the goalpost, but they gave it to him, so that's the way it stood.
Both teams had super players, All-Americans. It was a concentrated group of athletes on both teams. And the fact that we were able to pull it out really keynoted the start of the success of the Browns over the years.
In the 1960s, the small town of Green Bay, Wisconsin was home to America's finest football team. The Packers were coached by the legendary Vince Lombardi, a relentless perfectionist who believed in discipline and control, and, most of all, in character and resolve. His teams reflected his hard-edged personality, and they performed with a spirit and will that forged 3 NFL championships in 5 years. The Packers were clearly the standard by which all teams were judged. In 1966, they looked to extend their championship mastery against the upstart Dallas Cowboys.
We were the new guys on the block. You know, it was the first time we ever had really a winning season.
I don't think there's any question that the Green Bay Packers were the better football team, but we could have very easily been in Super Bowl I if we would just won that ball game. We were down 14-0 before we ever touched the football on offense. They drove 80 yards and scored. Elijah Pitts scored a touchdown to put them up 7-0, and they kicked off to us. Mel Renfro got hit, fumbled the ball, and Jim Grabowski picked it up and ran in for a touchdown. And all of a sudden, we're down 14-0.
We thought that it was going to be a rout, especially the defense, because usually when we get ahead like that in any game, especially a championship game, well, we did what Lombardi asked us to do, rise to the occasion, and just shut the opponent out from there.
But Dallas, with Landry's multiple offensive system, confused the Packers' defense, usually so structured and composed. The key to the Cowboys' charge of the first quarter was the running of Don Perkins, and his powerful burst near the end of the period brought Dallas all the way back.
They were running some trap plays inside, or misdirection plays, and Ray Nitzke, our middle linebacker, was kind of confused. And when you get a middle linebacker confused and going the wrong way, well, that's make it real tough on the defensive backs to try to come up there and make the tackle, and that's what was happening. Perkins was just running the ball. He was almost unstoppable. Then all of a sudden, they went to another phase of their game plan, and it helped us by not giving the ball to Perkins.
After the first quarter, the Cowboys generated little offense for much of the game. Quarterback Don Meredith continually misfired, and Green Bay shut down Bob Hayes, the league's most dangerous weapon. One play typified the Cowboys' offensive frustration.
We went to a formation where I was in a slot to the right side, and we had Bob Hayes to the wide side of the field. And of course, he drew double coverage from Green Bay a great deal, and Willie Wood was the safety. We were going to try to occupy the free safety, and I was going to be on Ray Nitzke man-to-man going to the corner. And we got the coverage that we wanted, but Willie Wood was so cagey. He turned and looked back at Meredith and saw Don looking to throw to the corner to him, and I remember the ball was almost right in my hands, and Willie Wood made a great play and knocked it down. We could have gone up by 7 at that time, and it really would have switched the momentum around.
While Dallas struggled, the Packers prospered. Led by Bart Starr, they abandoned their conservative ways, displaying a flamboyant passing game that produced 4 touchdowns.
Third down and long yardage situation again. He's in to throw, lofts a soft pass way downfield, complete for a touchdown to Max McGee.
The fourth score pushed Green Bay's lead to 34-20 with 5 minutes remaining in the game. Could Dallas come back against the mighty Packers?
Personally, no, I didn't think so. After we were up 34-20, I figured it was just a matter of time running out on the Cowboys. We just figured with our defense that we could shut the Cowboys down, and 34-20 is a big lead for the Packers, whether it's an exhibition game, regular season, or championship game.
A long one, and it is complete to Frank Clark. And Clark takes it into the end zone with a touchdown, a 69-yard pass play.
Dramatically, the Cowboys' offense had come to life. A touchdown now would tie the score. Suddenly, a pass interference penalty on the Packers gave Dallas the ball on the 2-yard line with 1 minute, 52 seconds left.
We all started thinking about sudden death, overtime, because we couldn't stop the Cowboys out in the middle of the field. So how could we stop them on the 2 or 3 yard line?
I remember punching somebody, I said, if this goes in overtime, we're dead, because the momentum, you know how football, all sports go, momentum was definitely in Dallas' favor. So I said, please don't let them score.
The strength of character that set Lombardi's Packers apart surfaced. Green Bay rose to a higher level. The Cowboys did not. On second down, Dallas tackle Jim Bokey moved before the snap.
And the Cowboys, who have come back time after time after time, have now moved it down very close to the Packer goal line, and all of a sudden they have their problems.
A poorly thrown pass left the Cowboys back where they began on the Green Bay 2. The 1966 NFL championship would come down to one final play.
All right, if the Cowboys go in here, we're going into overtime. They've got one play to travel 2 yards.
It was a play which we used often on the goal line, a run situation type of play where we're rolling out. It really was a good play. The only thing that happened there was that Dave Robinson came in, and our guard that pulled to cut him ran by him.
When he put the ball up, he was under pressure, off balance, and the toughest thing for a quarterback to do is throw back across the field on a rollout, and that's what he tried to do.
And it's intercepted by Tom Brown. Dave Robinson nailed Don Meredith as he attempted to throw that pass. It was intercepted in the end zone by Tom Brown, and the Packers have just taken the championship.
Most of the Packers, we didn't do a whole lot of rah-rah and jumping up and down because there were so many big plays during the season and during our careers. We would spend more time patting each other on the back and jumping up and down than we would, you know, concentrating playing the game. But after the game, you can believe we all kissed Tom Brown at least once.
The Green Bay Packers set the standard for the National Football League in the first 2 Super Bowls, defeating their AFL opponents by a combined score of 68-24. In Super Bowl III, the Baltimore Colts embraced the task of upholding that overpowering tradition as they faced the AFL's New York Jets.
We never recognized the American Football League, never watched their games. I'd never seen Joe Namath throw a football until the warm-ups prior to that game.
We had an excellent football team.
We laughed at their defense because we just honestly believed we could score 40 or 50 points against them.
We had the best defense in the AFL that year, and we didn't particularly care about the way we were made heavy underdogs.
The whole NFL thing was riding on us, that these upstarts actually were going to play against us, and we were 15-1. We had just played Cleveland in Cleveland, had beaten them 34-0 for the NFL title, and now we were going to finish up as the greatest team in history.
But the Jets' flashy quarterback sent out a challenge at a pregame banquet.
We didn't get enough credit team-wise, I didn't think, and I was just angry with the media. And I remember standing there that night, some guy in the back of the dinner yelled out something about the Colts going to do us in, and said, you know, hey, wait a minute, you know, you don't know what you're talking about. First of all, we have a fine football team. In fact, we're going to win the game, I guarantee you. Now, I didn't plan that. It might not even been me saying it, you know. It could have been the football god somehow saying it. It just came.
It came unwanted by his coach, Weeb Ewbank.
Well, I could have shot him because he upset everything that I had done.
We, of course, used it at that time to try to get our football team even more excited about the game.
I told Coach Ewbank, I said, Weeb, you know, look, if they need something to fire them up at this point, they are in trouble.
Namath's prophecy came true early.
You could tell in the first quarter that if we didn't get something going, that we were getting ready to lose a football game. I mean, it was just the way things were turning out. It seemed like it was going to be a comedy of errors.
While the Colts could find nothing to laugh about in their ineffectiveness, Joe Namath was putting a smile on the Jets' faces. He launched an attack that chipped away at Baltimore's vaunted defense with Matt Snell's powerful rushing and George Sauer's acrobatic catches. Suddenly, a game that was expected to be one-sided to the Colts' favor was being systematically dominated by the brash team from the other league.
Namath on a handoff to Matt Snell. Snell at the 5, Snell at the 3, Snell touchdown! Matt Snell in the end zone on a wide sweep to the left.
Jets have drawn first blood.
With a score of 7-0 late in the second quarter, the Colts still had plenty of time to strike back. Quarterback Earl Morrall, who was bewildered by the Jets' defense all day, tried to turn the tables with a trick of his own.
Morrall handed off to Tom Matte. Tom Matte started a sweep to the right and then stopped and lateraled the ball back to Earl Morrall. Jimmy Orr was going down and making it look like a running play and then was supposed to get open in the corner of the end zone. Well, he was open in the corner of the end zone, but when Earl got the lateral back from Tom Matte, he could not find Jimmy Orr in the corner of the end zone. The band was down there and they were ready to come out onto the field at halftime. And the background of the band seemed to be such that Earl just couldn't find Jimmy, who was standing in the end zone waving to him wide open. So Earl instead made the decision to throw the ball down the middle of the field to Jerry Hill, but the Jets came up with their interception, which killed our opportunity to get a touchdown on the board before halftime. It was a big play in the game.
It sent the Colts into the locker room wondering when their big play would occur. But Namath remembered a different play early in the third quarter.
If there was a turning point, I thought Ralph Baker's tackle and fumble recovery in the first series of downs in the second half solidified our confidence as a unit. We got the ball right away, and Jim Turner kicked a field goal for us, put us up by 10 points. When we got up 10-0, we felt even more confident at that time than any other time in the game.
And the Colts were quickly losing confidence.
We didn't do the things that were necessary to win a Super Bowl game. We were finally able to generate a drive that scored a touchdown, but it was too little too late.
The Jets made good on Joe Namath's guarantee, and while they rejoiced in their victory, the Baltimore Colts reeled from the shock of unexpected defeat.
Well, that was the worst day in my professional playing career.
It was probably the most miserable time in my life.
This had to be the biggest disappointment because of the magnitude of the loss. Because I didn't want to be the first team to lose to the upstart American Football League.
These upstarts achieved the upset that changed the course of football. Their victory was shared by the entire AFL.
You can't imagine the feeling that I had being a part of the American Football League to see the Jets defeat the Baltimore Colts, because I was sitting in the stands and all around me were people cheering for the National Football League. And I was the lone voice there, and they kept saying how strong that they were. And I sat silent. The first quarter, the second quarter, they were telling me, you know, how Baltimore's going to come back and how we were the inferior league. And then about the fourth quarter, I finally stood up and said, well, how do we look now against the great NFL?
Christmas 1971. Santa Claus came to Kansas City, but for the Chiefs and the Miami Dolphins, their AFC playoff game seemed more like Labor Day.
That game was a struggle, and you had to concentrate so much on the fact of the struggle and to keep renewing your enthusiasm and your determination just to hang on and not let them take it. Well, that game had everything. That just had offense, it had defense, it had the kicking game, it had Podolak. We still haven't figured out a way to stop Podolak in the ball game.
Kansas City's Ed Podolak, number 14, an obscure running back who rarely played in the spotlight, took center stage against the Dolphins, both through the air and on the ground.
It seemed like everything we tried offensively worked. Every time I got the ball, there was a huge hole. I remember one situation where we'd even completed a pass to Otis Taylor, and I happened to be right in the right place at the right time, and he lateraled the ball to me, and we gained an additional 20 or 30 yards on the play.
Podolak Podolak weaved his way in and around the Dolphin defense and ultimately into the end zone to give the Chiefs the early lead. Podolak found the perfect Christmas gift for his team. A postseason record-setting effort of 350 all-purpose yards.
It was the kind of day that you really can't explain why it happened. Of all the games I'd played in as a pro, some days things just seem to click, and some days you can't make things work no matter how hard you try.
While Podolak became the game's main attraction, everything seemed to click for quarterback Len Dawson and his supporting cast as well. In contrast to the Chiefs' lofty performances, Miami quarterback Bob Griese directed a steady ball control offense that was anchored by their backfield duo, Larry Csonka and Jim Kick, number 21. While Miami counted on Butch and Sundance for the touchdowns, it kept the Dolphins in the game. The Chiefs turn once again to old reliable Ed Podolak for the fourth quarter lead. But the Dolphins proved to be the match of the Chiefs, mounting a comeback each time they were down.
We had several opportunities during that ball game to quit and say, listen, we're young, they're the champions, we're just young people just getting our feet on the ground. We've played well. We've played well to get here. We've played well against Kansas City, the champions, and we can just pack it in and go home. But several opportunities, several times we didn't do that, and we just kept coming back, and finally things turned our way.
Marv Fleming's touchdown tied the score with less than 2 minutes to play. But the Chiefs, Super Bowl champions just 2 years before, would have one more possession. Back to receive the kickoff, of course, Ed Podolak.
He gets it high. Back right on the goal line is Podolak out to the 5, the 10, the 15, to the 20. Somebody going to get him. He's at the 50, down to the 40, the 35, and he's out of bounds. On the 22-yard line. That's exactly what we did not need. Oh, what a way to lose the ball game.
The return deep into Dolphin territory set the stage for a game-winning field goal attempt by Jan Stenerud, one of the best in the league. But Stenerud's shocking miss sent the game into overtime.
I just couldn't believe that he missed it. We were exuberant. I mean, I think it was from like the 17 or 20-yard line, something like that. It was a chip shot for Jan. I don't know what happened, whether it was the holder or the snap or whatever, but he missed it. Gave us renewed enthusiasm.
They had just dodged a bullet in the fact that we had missed on a field goal attempt from in close to win the ball game, and it was us that had the air come out of our balloon at that point, and we had to regroup in a hurry.
Both teams had to regroup, and it was the defenses that took control, turning the game literally into a standoff through the 5th quarter and well into the 6th.
It boiled down into a game that went back and forth and couldn't get much done. And then finally we go back to a play that we hadn't used in a long time. It was a rollout draw to Csonka coming back.
Come on, defense, now's the time, baby! Now's the time!
we knew Lanier and company would quite possibly run themselves out of the play if we set up and really pulled off a good enough looking fake. The defense was so aggressive. They were out of position because of their intensity. It worked, but I just ran out of gas about 40 yards down the field.
Zonka's run gave the Dolphins their best opportunity for a game-winning field goal after almost 23 minutes of overtime.
How far, Carl? 37. The ball is right directly in the center of the playing field. If Garrow makes it, the Dolphins win. The big play of the game for the Dolphins. Here's a snap, set down. The kick is up. He's got the distance. It's good! The Dolphins win! The Dolphins win!
Miami's victory in the longest pro football game ever played established the Dolphins as the team to watch in the early 70s.
That was the first time that the Dolphins realized that we just weren't a flash in the pan, and that game seemed to go on forever. But somehow, some way, someone would make a play to keep us in it. And I think it was the first time that we realized that we could play heads-up football with just about anyone.
On an unseasonably warm December afternoon, a 1977 AFC playoff game pitted the young Baltimore Colts against the defending Super Bowl champions, the Oakland Raiders.
You had to like the Raiders at that time over us. And probably they were a little bit better team than we were. They had more experience. They intimidated people. And we were young and probably on the upstart and thought that we can get out there and compete against them.
We had a great deal of respect for Baltimore because Burt Jones was a terrific quarterback when he was hot. He had a lot of weapons to work with. Going into the game, I think we anticipated a high-scoring game.
Stabler's prediction seemed destined to come true for Oakland. Clarence Davis lifted the fortunes of the Raiders with the game's first touchdown. But soon Lady Luck was smiling on both defenses. Despite the presence of two of football's premier quarterbacks, Stabler and Burt Jones, neither team was able to gain the upper hand through much of the first half. Bruce Laird, number 40, one of the Colts' defensive leaders, finally got the best of his opponent.
What we tried to do with Kenny Stabler is try and give him different looks and try and mix up our defenses a lot because he is a good veteran quarterback and very astute at reading defenses. I had weaseled behind one of the other guys in the zone. It looked like man-to-man. He tried to look downfield and didn't see anybody open. He tried to hit Van Egan in the flat. As soon as he released the ball, I just broke in front of Van Egan and picked off the pass. Once I got it, there was no one there. It was only Kenny and a couple linemen, so it's just clear sailing right down the field.
Laird's touchdown gave the Colts a surprising halftime lead.
I used to say something at halftime. I had no idea what it meant, but I heard it someplace, and it sounded like a pretty good idea. The last thing I'd say was, don't worry about the horse being blind, just load the wagon. Then let's go. I have no idea what it meant, but some guys kind of got excited when I said it.
Stabler certainly got excited. He loaded up the wagon with a full arsenal for the second half. With weapons like Cliff Branch, number 21, and sure-handed Dave Casper, number 87, the Raiders finally went on the offensive. The Stabler to Casper connection contributed 2 touchdowns to this aerial assault. But Baltimore's Burt Jones, number 7, as Stabler had predicted he could, sparked the Colts to their own explosive barrage. The Colts matched Oakland score for score, and the lead changed hands 6 times in the second half. The Colts regained the lead 31-28 with Ronnie Lee's second touchdown of the game.
We had them down the fourth quarter, and I can remember so well. We thought we had the game wrapped up, and we decided that we're going to just sit on the ball. We're going to try to run the clock off. I think that was the biggest mistake that we made. If we kept playing our game that we were playing, throwing the ball down the field for a first down, keeping them off balance, we would have won the game, but we were playing to hold a lead as opposed to playing to win. You know, you needed to keep putting pressure on the team and scoring points, and we just weren't doing that. You just can't sit on the ball against a great football team. That was a fatal mistake that we made strategy-wise.
As the clock wound down, Stabler took advantage of Baltimore mistakes by utilizing his flawless tight end.
Dave Casper is a prototype tight end, as far as I'm concerned, the best that ever played. And he was another one of those money players that always came up with things. We designed the play to get to David with a post-type pattern based on what they had done before with that down and distance. And it worked out, and it was not a very good throw.
All year long we run that pattern. I'm just clearing out, but they had given a different type of coverage where I was getting a single coverage from a DB, and they said hit the ghost to the post. So I get up line of scrimmage, and the first thing I do is whoever was that linebacker caught me right in the neck. I mean, I didn't even get off the line of scrimmage, so I set the whole play up by being a half-ass play at the time anyway. So I take off down the field, and this guy's covering me inside out, and I'm supposed to run a post. I cut across his face, and I was wide open, but the snake had to get rid of the ball because I was so late. And it's over here somewhere, so I played a lot of baseball. I just looked down, and it wasn't hard catching the ball because the darn thing came right straight down. But the hardest thing was when you took a look this way, saying, now where's that ball going to come down? Because you had to duck down and then pick your head up. And of course, you can't see anything on the top of that helmet until the ball starts coming down.
That play was, yeah, that made the game for us.
It put Oakland in position to hit the game-tying field goal. And well into overtime, the Raiders finally rediscovered their second-half form. This time, they sent the ghost all the way to the end zone. Dave Casper had put a scare in the Colts all day, and it was only fitting that his third touchdown gave Oakland the victory. The Raiders' overtime heroics put an end to the third longest game in NFL history. A game that will be remembered for heroes on both sides.
That was a great game. You know, the funny thing about that game, that Baltimore playoff game, is it didn't get talked about as one of the great. I mean, if it were a Super Bowl, that game had been a Super Bowl, it'd be the greatest football game ever played.
In the 1970s, America's team was the Dallas Cowboys. They projected an aura of invincibility. They encouraged a mystique of superiority. And they did it with style. This was a team of sparkle and flash, concerned with image and appearance as well as performance. Yet they were also coldly clinical, as embodied in the familiar persona of head coach Tom Landry. It was only fitting that the Cowboys' final regular season game of the decade matched them against their arch rivals, the Washington Redskins. Grit versus glitter for the NFC East Championship.
That game in '79 was for the division championship, and there was an awful lot at stake. And we really felt like we were a football team that could be beginning to become something very special.
Not only was this game for the NFC East championship, but also was a home field advantage into the playoffs. And history will show that invariably the team with a home field advantage ends up in the Super Bowl.
At Texas Stadium, the Redskins surprisingly charged ahead with an offensive barrage that produced 17 points in little more than a quarter. It was swift and stunning, yet somehow it did not inspire confidence, only doubt.
Those of us that have been around long enough knew whenever you're playing a Roger Staubach and the Dallas Cowboys, no lead is enough, and especially with that much time left.
The comeback magic of Roger Staubach had shattered the spirit of many an opponent. On this day against the Redskins, Staubach boldly went where he had gone so many times before. Three unanswered touchdowns pulled Dallas into the lead midway through the third quarter.
You know, it was funny. It was almost like it was expected. You're just not going to blow the Cowboys out. We knew they'd score once or twice, but the one that hurt us was, I think, the one before the half. They had the third down, an extremely long yardage. They get 3 out of it, maybe. And then he hits Preston with that fingertip catch.
First, Washington had dominated. Then the Cowboys took command. Two rivals banging heads.
The game at that point developed into the type of football game that has been the trademark of the Redskin-Cowboy rivalries, and it wasn't something that was unfamiliar to any of us.
This seesaw struggle would be decided in a fourth quarter as fast and furious as any in recent NFL history. The Redskins drew first blood, vaulting back on top. Then, with less than 5 minutes to play, one final big play by the Redskins seemingly put the game out of reach.
We ran a quick inside trap play. John Riggins broke outside and outran the entire defensive secondary of the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, he outran them all.
Riggins coming to the right side, and Riggins has a big hole, first down the sideline, 40, 30, he's gone to the 20, the 10, he's still on his feet, touchdown! A 66-yard run by Riggins, exploding away to the outside, and that may be more than the Cowboys can overcome.
I remember very specifically a lot of players in our teams congratulating each other, talking about the Super Bowl, talking as though we had the game wrapped up. And that probably was an indication that we felt as though the game was over, and that I think from that point on we may have let up a little.
When you only have a 13-point lead, it's just scary. It just scares the living daylights, Eddie, because you know they can do it with 2 touchdowns. Those numbers loom in football like giant rain clouds over a parade.
And Theismann knew all too well the power of Roger Staubach to snatch victory.
I think his ability to pull a team out in the final stages of a football game is really unique in our business. From that standpoint, he was something special.
Staubach's time-tested specialty was bringing the Cowboys from behind to the fourth quarter. 22 times in his remarkable career, he had overcome defeat in the final minutes. This would be his biggest hurdle, his greatest challenge.
Clock is running, 2:38 left in the game. Can it happen again? Can they come back again? Shotgun formation, Staubach looking into the face of a 4-man rush, throwing, caught, springs, go, touchdown, run, spring. 2:20 left in the game. Can they do it again?
You gotta believe, Brad.
They just moved the ball so fast, and it was so frustrating. Any move we tried to make, Staubach would counter, Landry would counter, and they'd meet it, and they'd come up with something else, and it was just an extremely frustrating day to be playing defense. I wanted the clock to move so much faster than it was, but you know, they did everything perfectly in that last half.
Yet Dallas needed another touchdown to win. Less than 2 minutes remained, and the Redskins had the ball. Clearly, Washington still had the upper hand.
The Redskins had us 3rd and 1. They gave the ball to Riggins on an outside play. To make the first down, the game's over with. And Larry Cole, who wasn't the fastest guy on our football team, was playing inside, and he was able to catch him going around the end, which wasn't very easy because Riggins, he was younger in those days, and he was fast. And the fact he caught him and gave us a chance to get the ball back was the thing that won the ball game for us. It was a great, great play on his part.
Staubach would get that final chance to work his mastery.
When he got the ball back that last time, I said to myself, please, if you're up there listening, you know, pay attention to me because it's gonna take more than a miracle. He was hot. I mean, the man was just hot. Everything he threw up, everybody was catching.
His leadership brought them back time and time again. It was his last year as a player, but he was running around like a young kid. It was probably one of his finest performances.
A minute 1 left in the game. This is an all-timer. Cowboys at the Redskin 33. Second down 10. Trailing by 6 points. From the shotgun. Staubach has time. Throws. Caught.
You gotta love them. I mean, you gotta love the Cowboys. They're the most exciting team in the NFL. They can pull it out.
42 seconds left in the game. Redskins lead by 6. How do you live like this? How can you live like this, doing this every week?
This is what it's all about.
This is a killer. Second down and 8. From the 8-yard line. No shotgun this time. Staubach throwing in the end zone. Tony Hill! Touchdown! Tony Hill! The Cowboys have won the East. The Cowboys have come from behind twice. Unbelievably.
Just another day at the office, Brad.
Yeah, just, you know.
We had a blitz called in that situation. They read it again perfectly, read the coverage, and went right to the receiver who had one-on-one coverage.
I could see when our corners came up to press him that that's what he wanted to do. I knew it because I would have, if I was in his shoes. I'd have taken the shot. It's no timeouts. You throw it up. It's an incomplete. The clock stops. Hey, way to go. And as soon as the ball went up, I kept thinking, oh, no, overthrow it. And then Tony started to get closer. Then I went, oh, no, drop it. And then he caught it, and I went, oh, no. That was, that was the oh, no.
This miraculous victory was the culmination of the extraordinary NFL career of Roger Staubach. His refusal to accept defeat and his will to surmount all obstacles was this man's football legacy.
That was probably Roger Staubach's greatest game, and he played many great games for us.
Looking back on this one, I think history certainly would prove that it was one of the best games ever played.